Right.
So I am here with Rob Dial, and I just want to share with you, as you heard in the intro, Rob is an amazing coach. He's a teacher. He's a messenger. His podcast following, he's got the Mindset and Motivation podcast with over, I think, 1 million downloads. It's one of the top podcasts in the world. And he's got a huge following in the self-development world. The thing is, Rob, you've been a coach for me, a mentor, a guide. I really consider you a friend. And you have so much wisdom. I'm so excited to get into this conversation. I've been like waiting and waiting to find a time to do this because
I know.
I want to share you with my listeners and beyond.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. Thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good because you texted me yesterday and we always try to plan in advance. And I'm like, I don't know my schedule in a week. I'm always out of town, but I was like, I do have time tomorrow. And so we got time today and it's perfect.
Yeah. And I was like, done and done. We're doing it. And so here we are. And I think things happen spontaneously like that are sometimes the best. And I'm just so psyched. All right. So for those listening who don't know you, you've got, there's so much to say about you. The premise is really this idea of the U.S. you, the most authentic aspect and essence of you and how that's shown up in your life to where you are today. And maybe could you just tell people a little bit about you, a little bit about your background, and then we can start moving into like who you are and what you do today. Because I think it's extraordinary. And I'd like to give people a little backstory.
For sure. So the funny thing is I'm 33, but I've been doing this for 14 years now. So people are like, that's crazy. How the hell did that happen? So going back to my childhood was pretty good up until about the age of 9. I realized that my dad had an issue and he was an alcoholic. My parents got divorced around the age of 9 or 10. I don't remember which one it was. And then there was issues obviously back and forth. The best part about it was I always say I was lucky to have my father was an alcoholic because he was never abusive. He never talked down to me. He was just the type of alcoholic that would get drunk and then fall asleep on the couch. And that was it. And so it was good in that sense, but also there was a disconnect of him not being there because even when he was there, he wasn't there mentally or he'd fall asleep, like I said. And so he passed away when I was 15 from being an alcoholic. He had liver failure. And then I always felt like there was, I don't want to say something wrong with me, but I always felt like there was something a little bit off. And we never had enough money for me to go to any type of therapist. So when I was 19 years old, I was hired by a company called Cutco, which a lot of Cutco people. You probably had a lot of them on this podcast as well. Yeah. And so I was hired by the company, and John Berghoff was my coach, and Hal Elrod were both of them. I was the very first coaching client when I was 19. So I started there at Cutco, and then they got me into personal development. Cutco is basically this bubble of who's growing the most, who's going to the most conferences. Everyone talks about it. And so I just became obsessed with personal development because I realized I can actually get myself out of this position that I'm in. So I just started reading like crazy and reading. And then Cutco promotes very quickly to people who end up being pretty good. And so I was promoted to an assistant manager at 20 years old, which means that then I started interviewing people and training people. And then what happened was all of the stuff that was helping me in my life, I started teaching them. And so I became a coach for all of them. And by the time I left when I was 24 years old when I left, I trained over 2,000 sales reps. And, we did about $6 million worth of sales in those few years. And so then when I left Cutco, I went into sales training and helped a lot of people with sales training. But the thing that I really missed was the teaching on the personal development side. So then in 2015, I started my podcast, which was then called the MWF Motivation Podcast, because it comes out Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But I switched it to the Mindset and Motivation Podcast. And, that was my first spot into actually teaching the masses. That grew really fast. We did 1 million downloads in the first 12 months. And now we're doing almost 1 million downloads a month, so it's been quite a growth in that side. And then I became obsessed with getting my message out on Facebook, which is where I guess you could say my biggest following is, where there's about 1.5 million people that follow me on Facebook. And I try to put out, positive personal development stuff, but stuff that makes people rethink their life. I had a really good, probably the best compliment I've ever been given, if I'm being honest. So I was in a mastermind the other day and we were helping a guy out, and a guy that I've never really actually spoken to, but he's followed me for a long time. He sold about $5 billion worth of products through infomercials. And he said to me, he didn't even say to me directly, he was talking to somebody else because I was giving advice, and he jumped in and said, here's the thing that I think Rob doesn't even notice that he does himself. And his exact words were, Rob is basically like a modern day Mr. Rogers. And I was like, oh shit, that's the best thing I've ever heard. Can I cuss in this podcast?
Yeah. We'll put a little earmuff sign. Yeah, it's totally fine. Yeah.
So I was like, oh shit, that's the best thing that's ever been said to me. Because he said, Mr. Rogers would take something that was out of your awareness, bring it into your awareness in a very soft way, but then make you go, I need to work on this. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's actually exactly what I do. I've never thought about it that way. So that's what I try to do. I try to make people rethink their reality and kind of question where they are to then make changes to make the future that they want.
All right. There's a lot to unpack there. I know. I'm like, all right, where do we begin? Well, first of all, I'm like, should I call you Mr. Rogers? He's amazing. He was like, raised me.
I know, me too. I love it. I cried when I saw that movie.
Oh, I got to see the movie. I haven't seen it yet. Oh, I have to see it. I know he's a teacher, messenger, light, like what we talked about you. Tell us, so people listening in, I had the privilege of hearing, so Rob, you were at the Quantum Leap Mastermind in Austin. I heard you speak, and I am very big into intuition. My intuition was like, must connect with him, work with him. And you coached me for a while. And I mean, you're still in my head, by the way, all the time. I've got a Rob dial like going on, dialing in my head. That's like, Julie, did you really say what's there? Did you really say what you're feeling? Are you really sharing it? Like, there's a lot to say with that. It sounds like this, you said early on that something you really dealt with when you were younger, was this idea that you felt something was wrong with you. Mm-hmm. And assuming that many people feel that in some degrees, worthiness, not good enough. Talk a little bit. I mean, there's so much out there around how to deal with that, but I'm thinking anyone listening in has had times where they can relate and felt like, not good enough. These limited thoughts. I don't know where to begin because you have a lot to say on this, but just start wherever we can start with kind of how do you help people to deal with that?
Okay. So there's a lot there. Well, first off, you have to become self-aware of it. So I don't think there's anybody in the world that doesn't have some sort of self-worth issues, but self-worth issues can then manifest in different ways. And I used to be a person who would look at a homeless person on the side of the road and be like, well, what the hell's wrong with them? I don't think they get a job. Right. And their self-worth issues manifest in maybe alcoholism, maybe drug addiction, maybe not believing in themselves enough to keep a job or whatever it might be. Mine manifested in becoming a workaholic because I wasn't good enough. And the only thing that made me feel like I was good enough was becoming number one. So the reason why I was so successful in Cutco was because I was working 110 hours a week to try to finally prove to myself that I was worth anything. Because I don't think that I felt it when I was younger, right? And I don't think there's any person that doesn't feel it that way. And what I always tell people is no matter how great your parents were, they screwed you up in some sort of way. And so if you're out there and you're a parent, you're going to screw your kids up in some sort of way. Just try your best. And the reason why I say this is because a child's perception is never reality. So an example of what I mean is my girlfriend and I were having a conversation, and she was saying that she remembers her mom leaving her at daycare one day for the very first time. And she was so pissed. She was about 4 years old. And so she remembers her mom leaving her at daycare, and she took the chair and put it by the window and waited the entire time and didn't play with the kids. And I said, what's funny about that is that might not even be true. That might just be what you remember. You might have been there for 3 minutes because about 50% of what you remember is actually true. So she could have been there for 3 minutes, and then the kids were like, oh, popsicles. And she's like, oh, damn, popsicles. And then she runs off and goes to have popsicles. But the only thing that actually sticks in her head was sitting there waiting for her mom because it was such a big moment for her. Right? So even though her mom was amazing, she could have felt self-worth issues like my mom left me. She doesn't want to hang out with me because she was going to, it was mommy's day or whatever it was they called it. So she went to this thing. So she might have felt in that moment, I don't know if she did or not, that my mom would rather go hang out with somebody else than me. Which would cause self-worth issues, even if the parent's perfect. So children rarely perceive things as they actually are. And your memories are rarely what you actually think that they were. Yeah. So that being said, no matter how great you are as a parent, I don't want to say you're going to screw your children up. They're actually going to screw themselves up, I guess is a better way of putting it, by their memory being messed up. Yeah. So I think we all have them. They just manifest in different ways. Some people it's alcoholism. Some people like me, it's becoming a workaholic. Some people it's, becoming addicted to, love or sex. Some people it's addicted to food. They all manifest in different ways. Yeah. But first thing that we need to do, the first step of some sort of addiction is to admit that you have an addiction. And so for me, it took me a while to go, oh yeah, I'm addicted to working. And the reason why was because of the fact that I need to fill this void that I feel is inside of me. So I'm a big proponent of journaling. So I recommend that everybody gets a journal. I literally have my journal sitting next to me right here. And I recommend that people go, if I have a self-worth issue, easiest way to start journaling is just ask yourself questions that you want to know the answers to, because your brain is a problem-solving mechanism. Like if I were to literally say to you right now, what color shirt am I wearing? Even though you didn't answer it, Julie, your head already said black, right? Because our brain solves problems. That's what it's designed to do. The reason why our species survived, even though we weren't at the top of the food chain, is because we solved problems when they came up. There's a rustling in a bush. We solve the problem. We get away. Maybe we attack whatever's in the bush, so therefore it doesn't attack us. We solve the problem. Now, most people use that part of, they don't use their brain the way it's supposed to. So they take that part of their brain and they go, our brain kept us alive because all we do is look for the negative. Everybody's a negative person until you decide to be positive and switch it. So what happens is you go, oh, I'm a negative person. Why do I always find problems in my relationships and my money and my weight and my health and all of these, the way that I think about myself, the way I think about people around me? Why do I always cause these problems? Because your brain is looking for the problem because it doesn't have to look for a lion in the bush anymore. Right. With that being said, knowing that your brain works that way, give it a problem and have it solve it. And what is that problem? A question that you want to know the answer to. So you ask yourself a question and your brain will want to find the answer and find proof for whatever it is. So if I had self-worth issues, why do I think that I have them? Yeah. Is there some sort of place where it relates to my childhood? Where does it manifest in my everyday life? And you start asking yourself these questions, and it's like an onion. It's like there's layers to it. I've been doing this for 13 years and there's still layers to me. I was at the gym earlier today and I was like, oh my God, I think I might do this because of the fact that this used to happen when I was younger. Like it's like an onion. It just keeps going and going and going. There's layers to it. So the easiest way to find out if you have self-worth issues is, number one, realize how your brain works, use it to your advantage, ask it questions, and then force your brain to answer it. And then if you don't find the answer, because some people get discouraged because they don't find the answer right away, you've now taken your reticular activating system, which is a part of your brain that filters out everything except for what's necessary. It's the part of your brain that when you buy a car, you see that car everywhere, even though you never saw it before. So that part of your brain, you can activate that reticular activating system by basically asking it the questions that you want. And if you don't find the answer right away, your brain is now going to go and search for that answer subconsciously, even when you're not thinking about it. So sometimes when you're driving your car and you're like, oh my God, I just thought of that. Or you're in the shower when you can't be on your phone and you're 100% in your head, you find the answer to it because your brain is not filtering that out anymore. So the reticular activating system takes 2 trillion bits of information that our brain could take in at one point in time. Like there's everything that's around me. There's sights, sounds, there's a feeling of my chair. There's everything. There's my watch that I can feel, my bracelet, all of these things. And it filters out 2 trillion bits of information per second and only allows in 200 bits of information per second. So you're literally filtering out 1.2 something trillion bits of information. You're just trying to tell your brain what it needs to focus on. And so these questions allow you to focus on what you need to. There's a lot in there.
Woo! So like, hold on. Even just the piece, I mean, I'm like, wait a minute, we got to unpack this a little bit, because I hope if you're listening in, and I hope you're still listening, you're not going to want to miss any of this. What you just said is very important, and it could have been missed, which is our brain is designed to solve problems, number one. So because of the negative bias or looking for the negative, like no more lions, so we look for negative. What you said is, I love this, that our brain is looking for a problem. So give it a problem to solve, get your journal out, give questions. And if you keep asking, eventually what will happen is your brain is going to keep solving, looking and looking until eventually, like you said, you could be, riding your bike. I had it today. I was at the gym and I've been asking this question for my new book, like, what is this new acronym, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God. And I stopped, which was not a great idea because I should have kept working out. And I wrote it down, but that explains what you're saying. Cause I've been asking and asking and asking. And I've been like, when the heck's it coming?
Mm-hmm.
so you just really gave I mean, there's so much in that, even the reticular activating system. And, you know, I won't recap the whole thing, but so talk to me. All right. So asking questions, I love that idea. These big questions that you want the answers to. So you're asking these questions, you're getting answers. And then how do you go from there to integrating?
So that's a level 1 question. So I always tell people with journaling, there's a level 1 question. You know, the question for the level 1 question in journaling can be, why is it so hard for me to accept love? That could be a question that a lot of people have issues with, right? So you ask that question, and then your brain will go, oh, it's probably because of the fact that my relationship with my mother was not where it should have been, or my relationship with my father is not where it should have been. Because 95% of your issues come from your relationship with your mother and father, no matter how great they were. Because once again, going back to your perception of the way you perceive things as a child was not 100% the actual way that it happened. So if we ride with that question of, you know, what is my issue with, why can I not accept love? Is the question you can ask yourself, right? You might say the answer, like I said, is because my father was too hard on me when I was a child, right? And then what you do is you go deeper by asking yourself a level 2 question, which is always starts with who, what, why, when, where, how. Okay, who, what, why, when, where, how. So if I say, okay, why do I have a problem accepting love? It's because of the way that my father was too hard on me. Okay. If we're riding with who, what, why, when, where, how do I think that affected me when I was younger? How do I think that affected me with all of my relationships that I have? How did that manifest in my life and all of the different relationships? How is it holding me back right now? What will my life look like if I don't change this now? You know, there's the who, what, why, when, who could have been my biggest teacher besides my father that made me realize that this is my issue? Like, you can just ask, there's millions of questions if you just roll with who, what, why, when, where, how.
Yeah.
When did it happen?
Right.
You know, when do I think that it really held me back the most? And you just answer all of these questions. And the way that what you start doing, that's why I say it's like an onion. You peel back, level 1 is you peel back the onion, then level 2, and then level 3, 4, 5. So you can go as deep as you want to with these things. And you really what really starts happening is you become aware of your unconscious patterns. That's really what it is, because Harvard did a study and found out that 46% of what a human does is actually autopilot. So almost half of your life is complete autopilot. If you've ever driven home from work and then you're like, how the hell did I just get home? That's autopilot. That's what it is. It's your brain, because your brain requires more energy than anything else in your body. Your brain is your most energy consuming organ, and thinking requires it to use the most energy. So it's going to try to use as little energy as possible by creating autopilots. So what happens is once you start journaling these things, you start to realize, oh, I'm doing this. What makes it so hard for me to accept love? Well, maybe what you're going to find out is it was your father. How did it pop up in other parts of your life? And then you ask yourself questions. How is it, manifesting in my life currently, or my current relationship? Oh, I don't pay enough attention to my spouse because I'm always on autopilot and I'm not actually thinking about her in front of me. And so you can just dive as deep as you want to in it, and you take it from your past, try to go through your life up to where you are now. And then you ask yourself, in this current moment, how's it holding me back? Then look into the future. What's my life going to look like if I don't overcome this now? Yeah. And you start to peel back the layers and really start to learn about yourself in ways that you never knew really existed, because you have all of these unconscious patterns that you're stuck in.
Okay. First of all, I am like loving, so everyone listening, I've like been dying to have a conversation with Rob. We always love talking to you. I'm like, okay, Julie, there's like 20 things that I could go into, but that's okay. I'm keeping myself managed right now, because
there's a lot. And I talk fast, so it's like twice as much as a normal person.
Yeah.
I go real quick with everything.
You guys don't put this one on fast forward or fast speed. Please don't.
I listen to myself on fast forward. It's intense. I listen to everyone on fast forward, and then sometimes it rolls into my own podcast. I'm like, no. Like,
yeah, not yourself. Don't do it. Don't do it. You said something before I think is very interesting, and I'm curious about a little bit more what you've discovered. I know you talked about your dad and having this alcohol addiction, but you also kind of alluded to, there's all kinds of addictions, and I'm in the same camp, I believe, where, I really believe, just like, we all, I think, have dealt with self-worth issues. And I really believe we're all, most people, maybe there's like a few on the planet. I could name a few that I would think, but we're addicted to something. and, or connected to something in a way that's not serving. And so I thought that was interesting because I'm not sure everyone listening has thought about it that way. And then I'm wondering, just for you to talk a little bit more vulnerably or in depth with your dad, like how was that experience for you? Because I know that must have been somewhat traumatic to lose him like that, even though he wasn't abusive to you, you said still being an alcoholic, that can't be easy. That was what you saw.
Right. So yeah, I think the thing about it, what for me was that I think that I was lucky in the fact that I view myself as a child. What I was as a child is kind of a different person than I am now. So when I look back and say things about that kid, I don't say it in any sort of narcissistic way. I say it as in like, oh wow, that was me.
Yeah.
And so when I view that child, I think that I was really wise. Like, I think I was lucky enough to be really wise and understand the situation. I was never the kid that blamed themselves for my parents getting divorced. Like that never happened. And I realized that there was an issue, and I was very aware of the fact that we were poor. I was very aware of that when I was 9 years old. My mom took me to a women's shelter so I could get toys for Christmas. Like I knew what was going on, and I understood all of it at 9. And so I think that for me, I was just able to look at the situation and go, yeah, this isn't my fault. And really crazy thing for me to think that a child would think this. I was like, yeah, this is just kind of the way my life is. And so now I need to work past it. But what I did realize though, is that my friends' parents were not the same way. So the way that I looked at it, whereas when I felt like something was wrong with me, I felt like I started at a deficit, but I was also really competitive in sports. So then it was my job to make up that deficit.
Yeah.
Knowing that my father had issues. And I was always very aware, like the reason why I think that the reason why I was lucky enough to be a wise child was that my father had his issues, and I knew he had his issues of being an alcoholic because he walked into the room right after his dad had killed himself and shot himself in the mouth with a shotgun when he was 12 years old. So I knew this story. I knew my dad, and he never talked about it, but my mom had told me, my dad walked in when he was 12 years old after seeing his dad kill himself. I knew that he was an alcoholic because I just somehow made the connection as a child. He was an alcoholic because he had demons he wasn't overcoming. So for me, I think from there, it started very early self-awareness and going, I'm not going to be the one that's going to have these issues. My mom's biggest fear in the world is that I'm going to become an alcoholic. And there's absolutely no way in this earth that I will ever be. I haven't drank alcohol in like 60 days. Like it's not part of my makeup, and it never will be. Yeah. So for me, I think the things that I learned from it was I started at a little bit of a deficit, I felt like. And there were people who had way worse childhoods than me. I just wasn't aware of them. Yeah. But I never felt like that was something that I couldn't make up through hard work, which is where I think the addiction came from.
Yeah.
Right? So instead of thinking about, what 9 or 10-year-old goes, well, how am I feeling emotionally because of this? Like it doesn't happen. So it manifested in, I'm going to work harder than everybody else in the basketball court. Because I felt like there was a deficit in my life from a family area. So I'm going to make that way up in other areas as much as I can. And so that's where sports came in. And then when sports left, it became an addiction to, I wouldn't say it was an addiction to partying, but I was like a professional partier in high school and in college. And then I found Cutco. And then I was like, oh, I can be a professional at this. And this is my actual way to get out of it. Yeah. And so for me, I felt like that was the way it manifested, and the way I learned as a child was that I was starting at a deficit and I needed to work harder than everybody else to get to where I want to be in life. Yeah. But there was never a place of blaming myself for it or thinking that I couldn't make up that deficit.
Talk to us though. So you talked about, being poor and having to go to get toys at Salvation Army or Goodwill. And I know you've done a lot around your mindset around money and abundance, and what we're going to come back. Like we're going to come back to what you were talking about. I think this is really, really important. As someone who has had a mixed, interesting financial story in my own past, and have dealt with many people that, wherever you come from, most people have something around it. I'm curious how you went from that seeing poverty to, where you're thriving and you have a whole different mindset.
Well, so that took time. That was a whole other issue that I had to self-diagnose. So what happened with me was I started in Cutco at 19. At 20 years old, I made $33,000 that year, which was more than I'd ever made. And then I didn't think about the fact of money was always what I was working towards. Money and competition, being number one and making money was always what I was working towards the most. But what that turned into for me was when I was 21, I went from making $33,000 one year to $177,000 the next year.
Wow.
And I was 21 making almost, double six figures. But what was crazy about it was that if I looked at my bank account, I still had the exact same amount of money in my bank account as I did when I made $33,000. And so I was like, this is really crazy. So the whole thing happened. I still remember I was listening to Awaken the Giant Within, Tony Robbins, chapter 4, where he talks about pain versus pleasure. I was like, this is interesting. Maybe I can use this, because what he says is every animal, humans or animals, will either run towards pleasure or away from pain. And what I started asking myself was, when I deal with money, which I was making a lot of it, but I wasn't keeping any of it. I had none of it in my bank account. Where is my pleasure and pain relating to money? And so what I think happened was this, as I went, okay, I'm relating pain in some sort of way to money. I'm relating pleasure in some sort of way to money, right? And so what happened was I said, where am I relating my pain to money? And what I asked myself the question was, why would I associate pain to money in some sort of way? And I remember being a kid, watching my mom struggle to pay the bills. I remember her watching her do the taxes, because she was a realtor. So she had to pay, at the end of the year. And I remember, just even if it only happened once or twice, I remember stress being associated with money with her. And anything that stresses my mom out is going to be in my head is going to be associated with negative, right? Yeah. It's going to be painful. So even though I was making a lot of money when I was 21 years old, I was getting rid of all of it and spending it on things that I didn't need. So my pain was that money in some sort of way was related to stress. And so I got rid of it, because who wants to be stressed out? I just spent it on stupid things. I'd walk into Walmart and I'd spend $1 every single time I walk into Walmart by getting a Snickers or whatever it was. I'd get something, $5, $10 here. And it wasn't any huge purchases. It was just all of this money would go out every place that it could possibly go out. Yeah. I was like leaking through all of the crevices because I wasn't actually, fixing the container, which was my mind. That's where my pain was with money. My pleasure with money was spending it, because I'd get a little drip of dopamine in my brain every single time that I would spend money, and it would go, yes, do it again. Yes, do it again. Because there's that little drip of dopamine, your body starts to get addicted to dopamine. So my pain was keeping money. My pleasure was spending money. So then I said, how can I reverse these and make these different? My new pleasure is going to be checking my bank account I literally checked my bank account today. I check all of my accounts every single morning still 13 years later, because it's just a habit. It's just become a habit. Because my pain also, besides keeping money, was checking my bank account. Yeah. Which I know everybody listening is like, no, I don't want to check my bank account right now. I was like, oh shit, I hope I have enough money this month. Right? That's what I always thought. And so the pain was associated with checking my bank account. So I switched it and said, I'm going to turn my pleasure into checking my bank account every single day and watching it grow, even if it's $5, even if it's $10, whatever it is. I'm going to associate pleasure to watching that grow. I'm going to associate pain to spending money. And so what I did was I took a rubber band, because I remember doing this when I was younger in high school and I was trying to get better at basketball. Every time I would miss a shot, I heard about Michael Jordan doing this. I would snap the rubber band, so that therefore the rubber band would associate missing a shot with pain. Your body doesn't want pain. It's going to run away from it. So therefore I'm trying to train my brain into wanting to make the shots all of the time. So what happened was, anytime I wanted to spend money, and that little bit of, oh my gosh, I'm about to get dopamine, that addiction would come up. I would snap the rubber band really hard, and it was like this immediate, oh no, I don't want that. And so you do it over, and I would have welts on my arms. And it was like, no, you don't want to do that. I'm training the deepest, most animalistic part of my brain that I don't want to spend the money on stupid things that I don't need. Yeah. And I also started asking myself, do I need this or do I want it? Oh, I want it. I don't need it. Okay, so then I don't necessarily need to buy it right now. So if you go back to, if you were to, I don't recommend this. This is kind of a harsh way to train a dog, but if you train a dog, most people do train them this way, where if it pees inside, right, you smack its butt and you put it outside. You smack its butt, you put it outside. Every single time, eventually the dog's going to go, okay, peeing in the house is painful. Maybe I should do it outside. That's what I'm trying to do with my own self of going, spending money is painful. Maybe I should watch it grow inside of my bank account.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to be pleasure. So that was the whole way that I tried to reframe my mindset around making money, and then watching it grow. And then went from $1,000 in my bank account to 2,000. And it's just, I just got pleasure in watching it grow. And I still check it every single day because of that.
Amazing. Well, let me just pause for a minute. You'd said it took time. And I think it's important people are listening if this is your pain point. And you and I worked on this. It's funny. I check almost every day now. I'm really proud of myself.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, you're in my head. I hear you all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not a bad thing. I'm like, wow, I got another persona, and it's a he, and his name is Rob Dial, and he's telling me to do this, and I'm actually pretty much listen. It's very funny.
Right. Awesome.
No, it's a big shift. It's a big shift. This took me a while. This took me some pain points around taxes and other things. But let's go back for a minute, because I think that this correlates. When you were talking, I'm going to bring us back to part of the conversation. When you were talking about worthiness and asking those level 1 questions and level 2 questions, and then rolling it out to the future, which is, it sounds like you did with money, like, what's it going to look like if I keep spending and spending? I make 177, I make 250, I make 350. It doesn't matter. I still have the same amount. Yeah. Because I think what you alluded to is this is in our subconscious, that this is in the programming and our habits. So in addition to wearing, the rubber band, what are other ways that you have seen work, that you use, that you work with all the people that I know that are a fan of yours, to shift that subconscious to around worthiness, around money? Like, love to just hear. I know you have a lot to say, so whatever comes out is all good.
So the first thing is from journaling needs to be self-awareness. Because you're not going to ever notice any issues in your subconscious unless you become self-aware of what they actually are. It's like going to a doctor, and the doctor, you sits down and never asks you what the problem is.
Yeah.
Right. The doctor has to ask you what the problem is in order to find out what the problem is, to give you a diagnosis, help you fix it.
Yeah.
If you don't become self-aware of yourself, you're not going to be able to diagnose it and then fix the issue.
Yeah.
So if you sit down with a journal, you ask yourself your most important questions, you then find the answers to them. And then you go, okay, well, now I need a plan to actually figure out what I'm supposed to do in my everyday life. Well, the first thing is this. I don't recommend that people throw too much stuff too many things at themselves. If you're trying to fix something, fix one thing at a time until you feel like it's fixed. Because if you try to fix everything, you're not going to fix anything. Yeah. It's like the old Chinese proverb, if you try to chase 2 rabbits at one time, you'll catch neither one of them. Yeah. Go after one rabbit and figure out how to get it. And then once you get it, then you can work on getting the next rabbit. So if you're out there and you're going, well, I want to figure out how to change this issue that I have that's deep down inside of me. Okay, first off, you need to become aware of what it is and the patterns that it creates in your life. And I always say that your brain has well-worn paths in the forest. If you look at a forest, you see all of these well-worn paths. It's easier to travel down them, down those well-worn paths that you've gone down 10,000, 5,000, 1,000,000 times, than it is to take out your machete and start creating a new path. But that's what you need to do. You need to create new neurological pathways inside of your brain. Yeah. And the only way to actually do that is when you notice that you're going down this path, this negative path that you don't want to, you become self-aware in the moment, and then you go, okay, what is my default? This is the thing that you have to have. My default that I planned before. So when you figure out what your issue is and you make a plan, part of your plan needs to be the default that you need to do when you catch yourself inside of this pattern. The worst thing to do is to catch yourself in a pattern and then go, what am I supposed to do? Oh shit. Oh, but I feel so bad about myself. And then you start judging yourself and then you don't go anywhere. Yeah. You need to know, I'm stuck in this pattern, and based off of what I journaled last week, this is what I'm going to do when I'm stuck inside of this pattern. So I'll give you an example. Like, a lot of people, have, like I said, self-worth issues. So what I'll do is I'll tell them, make an awesome list. An awesome list is like the 100 things that are great about you. And they could, any accomplishment, anything that's great about you, you could have won, could have gotten second place in 3rd grade spelling bee or something like that. Put that on your list. And then next time you find yourself talking negatively about yourself, default is to take out that list of 100 things and make yourself read through every single one of them. So if you have one negative thing come up, now you have 100 positive things come up. And what happens is you stop talking negatively about yourself because you're creating new neurological pathways and you're going, oh, I am pretty awesome. I am pretty good. Like I used to have a lot of issues. And an easy example is this. I used to have a lot of issues with self-worth and what I thought about myself and, you know, the way I looked and all of those things like most people do, until I just heard when I was in Cutco in a talk, just look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself, I love you 10 times every single morning when you wake up, but actually mean it and feel the feelings of it.
Yes.
And what's funny is I'm not narcissistic or cocky in any sort of way, but I literally, it's hard for me to find a flaw in myself just because I don't see them anymore. They're there, but I just don't pay attention to them because I program myself to look for what's good in myself.
Yeah. Brilliant. Woo! There's so much. Again, you guys need to like pause, break it down. Well, I believe I'm with you 100%. I mean, what we're doing, and you're saying, is we're training ourselves to be our biggest advocate, our kindest mouthpiece speaker. And I love this awesome list idea. I actually keep a file on my computer, emails. And anytime I get any lovely email note, I have this like file and I go through it sometimes. But I love this idea of these 100 things that are awesome about you. It's really, I mean, what I'm getting from you, and I believe this too, it's really getting, we have these programs that don't serve, that most human beings, maybe like 99%, have, and you're getting proactive about retraining. Like, so what you've done is you've trained yourself where it's hard to find a flaw. They're there because you're human. Although you said this morning at the gym, you had another thought about something. So clearly your brain is solving problems to find flaws, even though you don't feel them.
For sure. For sure.
I'd love to talk a little bit about your teachers, like who you tune into, who guides you, where you've been most inspired. I know we have a few of the same ones, but just I want to share, because people listening are going to be like, all right, I want more of Rob, and I want to know where, like, how does Rob get this? Who inspires you?
So when I first started, it was Tony Robbins. Yeah. When I was 13 years old, my mom made me visualize a basketball game because I was really nervous about it. And she got that from Tony Robbins. And so she used to listen to him, and I don't remember ever listening to him once, but maybe he was there and I like learned through osmosis in some sort of way. Like it just clicked in my head. But I would say Tony Robbins was the first one where I was like, oh, this is this. And that was when I was 19, 20, 21 years old. As of recently, the one that's, the past 2 years, probably 3 years, is Alan Watts is my biggest one. Alan Watts was like the biggest teacher out of all of them for me. He was a preacher, and he died like in the 70s, but his books are just incredible. They're insane. He's got one book. I can't remember the name of it. It was written in 1952. It's the something of insecurity. Whatever it is, it's the something of insecurity. If you read that one, it's a tough read. You have to read each page like twice, but if you get it, it's incredible. So the wisdom of insecurity, I think, might be it, something like that. So he's my biggest one. I listen to a lot of Wayne Dyer. I listened to the book Autobiography of a Yogi by Yogananda is really good for those. For me, it was a lot of motivational mindset stuff that would help me succeed for my first decade of doing this. The past 3 years or so since, doing ayahuasca, which, we could dive into that too if you want to.
Yeah, let's go in there next.
Yeah, my world shifted completely. And so now it's like I went from people that are successful and, some of the biggest teachers in the world to who are the people that are the happiest in the world? Who are the people that seem to understand the way that the world works and the spiritual side of it? So, I think Alan Watts is kind of the bridge between the two of them. I think even more so, Wayne Dyer is even more of a bridge between the two of them. And then, I go off on some tangents and look at some really weird stuff on YouTube, which I'm sure most people who listen to your podcast probably do as well. It's like, oh, cool. Like, like I'm sitting here, literally, you'd be so proud. I didn't even tell you this. Like I've literally got Palo Santo right here. Oh like I've got all this much stuff right here, which I never would have done. I would have been like, there's no way on God's green earth that I'm going to like go to a crystal shop and be like, oh, this is cool. Let me go ahead and get, some crystals. Let me go ahead and get some, sage, all of these different things. I don't even know what the hell these things are. Like one of them's like a charcoal puck. I don't know what the charcoal puck's used for. But it's literally a smudge kit that's right here that I bought because I was like, you know what? I'm going to start doing this more. So,
that's awesome.
So that has been a big shift for me because I was always like, I need to understand something analytically.
Yeah.
And then after I did ayahuasca, I was like, I don't understand anything and I never will. So it's kind
Okay.
of switched in that sense for me.
All right. We're going to move in a second to that. First of all, you're speaking my love language, talking about crystals and smudged. I'm like, I just smudged my house before we did this. And I actually just put my crystals out for the full moon because it actually absorbs the energy. Different podcast episode. I looked it up and I just wanted to say for people who are listening, it is The Wisdom of Insecurity. That is the book. And that's the one you recommend. Cause I don't know. I'm like, my addiction these days are books. And I know a lot of people listening.
You could just go to YouTube and type in Alan Watts and there's hundreds of hours of Alan Watts. You could just listen to him.
He's amazing. To be honest, I sometimes have to listen and pause and then go back. It's deep. He's real. So it's helpful for me to hear that from you. Deep. And I'm with you. Gosh, Wayne Dyer. I mean, drop the mic. He's amazing. Yeah. And so good. All right, let's talk. Let us dive into ayahuasca. And I'm thinking most people know about ayahuasca, but for those that are like, I'm not sure, it sounds like a cool name, maybe just to make it level playing field, we all can know kind of what it is and where you've done this. And I love that you're so open about it. I want to hear what's open up. It sounds like, so what I'm hearing is you went from your head to kind of this like heart opening and explosion.
For sure.
That's my, bias.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So let's talk about it.
Okay. So there's a lot. I could talk for hours about it and I have before. So give me a question that my brain can turn into a problem and then answer for you.
Yeah.
Because I'll go down whatever you want to give me.
Well, I think a quick thing, a quick little bit on what it is, and then how did it shift your lens in life? And we're not advocating for people to do it or not to do it, but I love sharing experiences. And this has been a life transformative event for you. You said I went from like the analytical trying to understand to I know nothing. So how did this experience get you to I don't know anything?
All right. So this is like my favorite thing to talk about in the world.
Yeah, you're smiling, you guys. You got to see this. He's smiling.
I had a guy that I was at a mastermind last week, and then we went to dinner. And he's like, is there, we were talking about business. He's like, was there like one big shift in your life that really changed everything? And I was like, man, I don't know what it is. I was like, oh yeah, for sure. Doing ayahuasca the first time was what it was. And he's like, oh, I've heard about it. Tell me about it. So ayahuasca is a tea that they've been brewing in Amazon for thousands of years. They don't know how long because there's not really records thousands of years ago in the Amazon. But what it is the psychoactive ingredient inside of ayahuasca is called DMT. DMT is called the spirit molecule. It's basically the quote unquote, the molecule that's going to let you talk to God is the easiest way to think of it. But DMT is a naturally occurring substance inside of your brain. The two times when it's released the most, number one is when you are born, and number two is when you die. But it's also secreted every single night when you go to sleep. So they say it's kind of like a very dream state. But the thing about it is incredible in the fact that I had been researching it for years, like 4 years before I finally had the opportunity to do it. And it just became legal in Oakland. So it's not legal anywhere in the United States except for Oakland. It just became legal. So I won't tell you where I did it, but I did do it one time, one night, and that was just one night. And then I followed up with 4 nights about a year and a half later, 4 nights in a row. So I'm very much the person that is like, show me the facts.
Yeah.
I'm really good at math. Like everything in my world, like I see everything in math, right? That's just math equations. I walk into a business and literally it drives Lauren crazy because I've already broken down their numbers in my head. And I'm like, how is this place profitable? They're going to be out of business really soon. And then 2 months later, they're out of business because my brain just works that way. Yeah. So I'm very analytical in the sense that that's the way that I see the world. Facts, figures, numbers, equations give me proof. Well, so I went on this journey of, I was raised Catholic, hated the church for a while because most people who were raised Catholic end up hating Catholicism at some point in time. Not everybody, but some do. And then I hated the church for a little while. And then I started going to church because I was really searching for something. And then I would say that I became very close to being atheist of, we just die and become worm food. Well, then, I started going back on this journey of spirituality with no religion attached to it, started meditating. And then I went and I had the opportunity to do ayahuasca for one night. And I had a extremely rare, intense session. Like it was very rare compared. Most people have like a beautiful first session. It's kind of light with them. It needed to break me down really badly. And so to the point where I'm talking about, like, I realized that heaven and hell are not some place you go when you die. Heaven and hell is a place that you create at every moment in your life, depending on what you decide to focus on.
Yeah.
It sent me to hell, like my personal hell. It sent me to it. And I was there for an hour and a half, and I was stuck and I was stuck and I was stuck. And what it did was, one thing we didn't mention is that you purge when you do ayahuasca. Purging can be throwing up. It's getting rid of physical energy. It's inside of physical things that are inside your body that need to get out to clear itself. And the best way I've ever heard it explained is a shaman said, ayahuasca is going to take all of the bad out of you and leave just the good. But that bad has to come out in some sort of way. So for some people, it's vomiting. Some people, it's pooping. Yeah. So, and one of my friends had, and I'll tell you about that in a second. So it can also be crying, laughing, sweating, yawning. For me, it's yawning. That yawning happens a lot when I'm doing it. But one of my friends who had done it before actually completely lost control of his bowels, which is very rare. Like 1 out of 400 or 500 people do it. He had done it, but you're wearing all white when you go to these sessions, right? God. So it's like breaking me down and breaking me down and breaking me down until there's literally nothing. Like I am to the point of I don't exist. My body doesn't exist. When I open my eyes, I'm in a different place. When I close my eyes, I'm seeing things I've never seen before. And it's so hard, and I'm face down. And I think to myself, did I just shit my pants? And I was like, now luckily I can tell you that I didn't now that I'm not in it. But the thought came into my mind because I think I had that fear of doing it because my friend had done it in a past session. And I said, okay, if I need to completely crap my pants in front of 13 other people in this ceremony, in order to show that I'm not in control anymore, I'll do it. I'll do it. I don't care. I'll do it. If it's going to make this better.
Yeah.
And as soon as that thought came into my mind, it was like everything was beautiful and became clear. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? Like I was literally creating my own hell. And once I gave up control, everything was amazing. And it was like, okay, you passed the test. Now we're going to go into the next phase. And so I started asking questions, and the questions that I asked immediately came into my head, and it was like, I've known them forever, but I just wasn't able to access them. Right. So it's like the question I asked myself, or I asked at that time, I asked ayahuasca, I asked the universe, God, whatever it is that you want to call the teacher there. I said, why was that so hard for me? And the immediate answer that came into my head, without me even finishing the finishing the question was already in my head, was you have a control problem, and you need to break me down for me to like release my control. And I said, okay, why do I have a control problem? And it said, because if you were to put one word over your entire childhood, the word would be uncertainty. My father being an alcoholic, I wasn't sure if he'd show up. I wasn't sure if he would be awake. I wasn't sure if he would be there. I wasn't sure if he would pay the bills. I wasn't sure of anything. When he died, I wasn't sure what was going to happen now. And so your entire life was uncertainty. And the only way to overcome uncertainty is to try to control everything. So you have a control problem. And it's also manifesting in relationships, because relationships, other people inherently are going to bring variables, which is uncertainty. So you're trying to control every situation around you, but the only thing that you can control is yourself. And so it was like these downloads from the universe of, oh my God, I've never realized. It's like, and I've been journaling for 10 years at the time. Like I just started realizing all of these things about myself and ways I treated people and things I needed to improve. And that's why they say it's like the spirit molecule. It's like you talk to God. God tells you everything that you need to fix about yourself, and then you go and you need to fix them. So then my life started changing, because when I was doing ayahuasca, I saw things and felt things and experienced things that I never thought was even in this realm of anything. And so now I'm like, I don't know anything. Like, I don't know if crystals work. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I'm not going to be like, oh, they're dumb. I don't know if saging works. I just know that I really like the way that Palo Santo smells. Like there's just certain things like that. But I'm hoping that it does. And if it doesn't work, I think that it's still, if it doesn't release, get rid of bad energies, I think that it still creates the belief of good energies, which improves my situation to then create the good energy. So it's like, is there bad energies or not in a room? I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know. Like, that's the one thing I'll say now. I never used to say that to myself. I'm not smart enough to know. But what I do know is that it creates a positive energy in me. So maybe that's just me bringing the positive energy that I need to. So, so that's the start of ayahuasca, you know, that's
we're gonna we need to do like another interview that we'll give people the heads up, like this is the episode on ayahuasca and all there is. Could we do that another time? Could we do that?
Yeah, for sure.
Just putting you on the spot.
Your introduction to plant medicine.
Your intro to plant medicine, exactly, with Rob Dial.
And people can Google if they want, and they can learn a lot more. So it's I'm going to try to spell it without actually seeing it. Ayahuasca. Ayahuasca, because they always think it's here, let me spell it out. I'll write it down. It's AYA. Okay, yeah. So it's AYAHUASCA.
You got it. Yeah. Ayahuasca. Yeah. And it is legal in Oakland. So maybe we'll do our next session in Oakland.
Yeah, right. Here's the thing. It's the most incredible experience, but because of how hard the first experience was, I've done it 5 times now.
Wow.
I have a very healthy, fearful respect for it, because it's basically like you release the reticular activating system, and all those 2 trillion bits of information now fly into your brain. You try to pick them up. So I have a friend that's there right now at Rhythmia, which is where I did it. And I have a friend that's there tomorrow, because tomorrow's a new group comes in, and they invited me, and I'm like, I'm not ready. It's not my time. And so they say you need to have a calling to it. And I just haven't been called to it since those 5 sessions. So
wow.
I've been called to other things, which, you know, we can talk about those as well sometime as well, but there's other.
Well, can you give us, just before we wrap, I mean, can you guys tell, this is like the beginning. We need like 5 more episodes. I mean, we just host the thing together. I'll just ask you tons of questions. That's it.
Just clear out a couple hours of your schedule.
Yeah. We'll just clear and make it like 5 episodes in one. Seriously. Yeah. Like, just do that. With one of my last questions is around kind of, you know, so what's this for? What's your greatest vision, the legacy you want to leave, the message, like being a messenger? I know that was something we talked about beforehand. What is the bigger vision and goal? And maybe just share a couple things that you have been drawn to that are going to lead you to that goal, to that vision.
Okay. So good question. I had this conversation with my best friend, Dean, and it was something that I had realized in myself. And he kept saying this question of, he was really trapped in leaving a legacy. He always wanted to leave a legacy because he has such respect for his father, who's awesome, and such respect for his grandfather, that's awesome, that he wanted to try to live up to them. Like, he wanted to try to live up to who they are. And he was like, a legacy. I'm always thinking about my legacy. And to be honest with you, I don't care about my legacy anymore. Like, it doesn't matter to me. It used to. And I think legacy is I think legacy comes from the ego, because we want to live past the time that we're alive. And I don't really care what happens after I'm alive. If everything that I've ever created dies with me, then that's okay. Because my only goal is I feel obligated, because I feel like I understand the world in humans in a way that most people don't. I feel like that's my gift. And I feel like I feel obligated to teach people, to help them in any sort of way that they can. Yeah. So it's hard, because I'm very much like, hey, you need to set goals. But also at the same time, I'm like, okay, like, you know, in 5 years, I want to have 5,000 people inside of my event. And I'm like, that's exciting. But at the same time, I'm also like, if it doesn't happen, I don't really care that much. As long as it could be 12 people. As long as I'm helping those 12 people, that's all that matters. You know, next year I'm going to have an event, and there's probably going to be about 400 to 500 people. But if we plan for 500 and 12 show up to that, I'll still be excited, because I'm still helping people. So my only goal is to use myself as the guinea pig. That's what I always do. I'm obsessed with personal development. If I didn't teach this, I'd still be doing all the exact same stuff that I'm doing. I've just realized that I am able to take very complex subjects and make them dumbed down for everybody, so people can understand. Like, I'm just able to simplify them, I found out, which is like, if I were to say my superpower, it's to take something that's super complex, like the human brain, and explain it to everybody so they can use their brain. Like, we're given this brain, which is the most complex, insane thing in the universe, and this mechanism, but we're not given a manual of how to use it.
Yeah.
As I work on myself, I'm like writing the manual of my own, and then I'm trying to teach it to people as well. So if I can bring myself out of suffering, and by learning how I'm bringing myself out of suffering, also teach what's helped me and the people whose ears want to listen to it, take it and use it, and it helps them, then that's all that really matters. That's the way that I feel.
Awesome.
That's what I'm focused on most.
Powerful. Oh, I love it. I love it. One last question that just came to me, of course, me being, for some of us who are not as like math, I was like, God, it'd be cool to be like that, be thinking about numbers and equations. And meanwhile, I'm like, I sense energy. And
which I don't at all. I don't ever feel energy ever. Like that's completely opposite.
Yeah. I remember when you went to Sedona.
My best friend. My best friend Dean and I are in Sedona. Dean's very much kinesthetic. He feels. And if you listen to the way people talk, you could tell. Like I'm always like, oh yeah, I saw that when I was there. He's like, oh yeah, well I was feeling this. We got to Sedona the very first night, and I love Sedona now. I'm gonna be there next month. And we got out, and he's like, you feel that? And I was like, no, but it's beautiful here. Like that's kind of how it was. Like I don't feel anything really.
Oh, that's great. That's a great way to say it, right? Versus like the extended empath. If you're in that camp, then you know what it's like. You feel everything, and you got to like keep it together. But I'm curious, just lastly, on the subject of intuition and kind of leaving the mind a little, or maybe you don't leave the mind. How do you, you guys, if you can tell, I'm like, I don't want this to end. We're definitely doing another session because I'm like, I love talking to Rob Dahl. This has been so fun. So many questions. But how do you define intuition? How does it show up in your life now with the ayahuasca experience? Because my sense is there's a connection to your heart with that, but your mind. So what does that mean to you?
So I will say this, going back to even what we just said a second ago, I don't feel energies, but I can understand. I'm a hardcore, like if somebody cries, I cry. Like there's no way to not cry for me. It's just the way it works. So I feel what the other person's going through, but I don't feel anything outside of that. Like I don't feel energy from plants or Sedona or any of those types of things.
Yeah.
But I think I'm very good at being able to place myself in someone else's shoes to then help them work through whatever it is. But
sure.
What was your question again? Because I went back to something you said before.
The empathy. You're empathic. Your empathy with people, just not spaces.
Intuition was the question, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So as much as I am a head person, I'm very much intuition. I do everything off of intuition. So the funny thing about it is I think that intuition, our head tries to talk us out of everything because our head only cares about us, our safety, and any type of change is seen as a threat to the brain.
Yeah.
So I know that when I feel like I want to go do something, my brain's going to try to talk me out of it because of the fact that it's going to be outside of its comfort zone. And outside of its comfort zone means a change, and a change is seen as a threat because the brain only wants to keep you alive. It doesn't care about your happiness, your success, love, any of that stuff. So for me, the thing that I always do is if I feel like it's right, I 100% do it. And the thing that I think is a skill that I've learned of is I know I'm going to fail. So I expect failure.
Yeah.
So when I went to start my podcast, I expected I was going to fail like crazy. When I started my Facebook, I knew I was going to fail like crazy, but I knew through the failure, I would learn how to do it correctly. And that's all that matters. So people look and they say, oh, you have 1.5 million followers on Facebook. How did you do it? Give me all of the tips. I'm just like, I failed my way to success in everything that I've ever done, but everything that I've ever done is off of intuition. I always say, I'll leave you with this because this is really like, I'm a visual person. The fact that I see everything in my head, I think that every person is in a river and it's their own river that they have. We're taught in society that success is supposed to be so hard that we need to fight and fight and fight and bash our way into it and work 110 hours a week. But when you get aligned with what it is that you're supposed to be doing, stuff starts happening very easily. Like I've made, not even bragging any sort of way, I made more money than I ever thought I could possibly make, working less than I ever have by doing something that I love. Like I don't even know how it's possible. But the reason why is because I stopped swimming upstream and I just started floating. Yeah. I went, oh, I'm fighting my way to success. Where am I supposed to be? Let me jump inside of this river. Oh, I'm in the river that I'm supposed to be in. Okay, let me just go ahead and just let things happen. Because if I look at everything in the universe besides a human, everything moves slowly in the universe. Trees don't try to hurry up how they grow. The universe is always constantly expanding. So that's why if we're stagnant, we feel like we need to be growing. It's because we feel like we need to grow, just like the trees that are outside my window right here. They're always going to be growing until the day they die. And if they stop growing in height, they'll still continue to grow leaves, right? So everything's always growing, but they don't try to hurry their growth, but their growth happens perfectly. And so for me, I'm not trying to hurry my success, but I'm trying to do what needs to be done every single day in order to get to wherever it is that I'm supposed to be. So, people are always rushing and rushing and rushing, and nothing in the universe does that. Even the fastest land animal, a cheetah, does nothing for 99% of its day. And then it runs as fast as it can for 30 seconds. It kills whatever it needs to kill, and then it eats it. Why are we the ones that just keep going 100 miles an hour every single day? We're not with the natural flow of the universe. And I think the natural flow of the universe is to stop trying to swim upstream and go, okay, what is my natural thing that I'm in alignment with? And how can I not just, the law of attraction, like The Secret, sit there and just hope that it shows up on my doorstep. No, I'm going to find out what I'm in alignment with, and I'm going to fall in love with it. And then I'm going to work at it every single day.
So well said. Yeah. Oh gosh, that's perfect. Yeah. And I love what you said, the undercurrent of that was pun intended, is that I'm just going to keep going, it's actually, you didn't have to try as hard. It's actually easier when you're in that space of being in alignment with what you love and falling in love with what you naturally love to do, your superpower, and then watching yourself flow down the river without fighting, and then watching all, success in so many ways. And I've seen it for you. I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it just listening to you, you're such an inspiration, Rob, and really how you've taken on your life and just said like, hey, I'm going to decide how it's going to be 100%. And you're really living it. I mean, I know that with you. I've seen his journal, you guys. It's out of control. Awesome. I remember it's awesome. I just want to thank you. It is so beyond fun. This is like one of my most fun conversations that I don't want to end ever. And for those listening, I know you're going to be like, I know I'm going to get comments. When is he coming back? So we'll find a time. We got to do round 2. And that can be the ayahuasca one with other things.
Yeah, we can talk all about that. I love talking about plant medicine. So we could do that for sure.
Plant medicine too. You're just, you're such a powerhouse. And I love your authenticity, your humility, and your wisdom. And I'm just so grateful you're sharing it with the world. We need it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.